My name is Linda. I'm 62 years old, a retired school administrator, and until a few months ago, I truly believed that moving in with my daughter Emily and her husband would be a peaceful, temporary solution. My husband passed away 4 years ago, and while I had been managing well on my own, a sudden fall in the kitchen left me with a fractured hip and a doctor advising that I not live alone during my recovery. Emily immediately insisted I stay with them. "Mom, it'll only be a few months," she said, helping me pack my things. And Mark promised it wouldn't be any trouble. Mark, my son, a man who could be charming when he chose to, but who always had this underlying hardness. Like he viewed kindness as a loan he expected to be paid back with interest. He was raised by a mother who treated him like the sun rose and set because of him. And though Emily saw that dynamic, she always excused it. The day I moved in, Emily and Mark stood by the door, smiling, but the smile Mark gave me didn't reach his eyes. It was stiff, polite, the kind you give a neighbor whose dog keeps digging in your garden. Still, I tried to ignore it. I was in pain, vulnerable, and willing to believe my daughter when she said everything would be fine. For the first few weeks, it was fine mostly. Emily worked long shifts as a nurse, so she often wasn't home, and Mark worked from his office upstairs. I stayed in the guest room on the first floor. I cooked when I could, cleaned a bit, made myself useful. Mark rarely spoke to me, but I chalked it up to his being a reserved person. But reserve eventually turned into annoyance. It started with little huffs, irritated glances, slamming cabinets in the kitchen when he thought I wasn't watching. Then came the comments. "Do you really need all these medications spread out here? Can you not leave your blanket on the couch? I like my house organized." Linda, please try to remember that. My house, that phrase always stung more than he realized, but I took the comments quietly because I didn't want to cause stress for Emily. She already looked exhausted every night. One afternoon, Emily left for a double shift, and I was in the living room folding laundry when Mark stepped in, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Linda, we need to talk," he said. My stomach tightened. "Sure, what's wrong?" He glanced at my folded laundry like it offended him. "This arrangement, it's getting out of hand." My heart dropped. "Mark, I'm trying my best. That's the problem. This is my home. My space. I didn't sign up to have another adult here disrupting routines." I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. "It's only for a few more weeks. The doctor said." "I don't care what the doctor said," he snapped. "Having you stay here is putting a strain on the house." I stared at him, stunned. "A strain? I barely do anything." "That's the issue," he said. "You barely do anything but still manage to take up space." His words burned like acid. I couldn't decide if I was more hurt or shocked. Before I could respond, he added, "We need boundaries." "Boundaries," I repeated slowly. "Mark, I'm recovering from a fracture. That's not my fault." His tone sharpened. "Look, I talked with my mother about the situation, and I stiffened." His mother, the woman who believed every inconvenience in Mark's life was someone else's fault. "What does she have to do with this?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. Instead, he checked his watch and walked away. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, a pit forming in my stomach. Something with Mark had shifted, and not in a good direction. The next morning, the shift became a landslide. I woke to the sound of voices, a woman's, a familiar woman's. My heart kicked in my chest. No, he wouldn't. Emily wasn't even home. With effort, I sat up, slipped on my robe, and hobbled toward the hallway. As I reached the living room, I froze. Standing in the middle of the room, holding a suitcase, was Mark's mother Patricia. Short, stern, and always looking like she smelled something sour. "Oh," she said when she saw me, "you're awake." I blinked. What are you doing here?" Before she could answer, Mark stepped in front of her. "Linda, go get dressed. We need to discuss some changes." "Changes?" My throat dried. "What changes?" "It'll be easier if you just see it," he said. He walked past me and pushed open the door to my guest room. I followed, confused until I looked inside. My things were gone. Everything. My suitcase, my clothes, my medications, my framed picture of Emily as a toddler, even my knitting bag. The room was completely empty except for 2 suitcases near the closet. "Patrice," I felt the floor tilt under me. What did you do?" "Where are my things?" Mark leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, expression unbothered. "I moved them. My mother will be staying in this room from now on." It was like a blow to the chest. "You what?" My voice trembled. "Mark, this is my room. I'm recovering. You can take the sunroom," he said flatly. "It has a futon, The sunroom. I could barely breathe. Mark, that's not even insulated. It's freezing at night. You'll manage. Patricia stepped forward. Honestly, Linda, this arrangement makes more sense. Mark needs me close by. You're independent enough. Independent. I was walking with a cane. My pulse hammered in my ears. Where are my things? In the garage, Mark said. I boxed everything. You can sort it out later. You threw my belongings in the garage. My voice cracked. Without even asking me, he shrugged. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal, I cried. This is Emily's home too, and Emily agreed. Mark lied without even blinking. I stared at him. He didn't even flinch. That was the moment. Something inside me hardened. A line crossed. A disrespect so deep it couldn't be walked back. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't cry, not when he could see. I simply said, "You're going to regret this, Mark." He smirked. I doubt it, but he did. Oh, he absolutely did. And it all began the moment Emily came home. Emily arrived home a little past 8 that evening. Her shoulders sagged with exhaustion, her hair tucked messily behind her ears. The unmistakable slump of a nurse who'd just survived a double shift. I was sitting in the unheated sunroom, wrapped in 2 blankets, my cane leaning against the futon that dug into my hip. I didn't want her to see me like this, but I had no choice. Mark had made sure of that. The minute her car door shut outside, I took a deep breath. This was going to be a storm. She stepped inside, calling out, "Mom, Mark, I'm home." Her voice carried warmth. Home. To her, it was home. To me, suddenly, it was hostile territory. When she walked into the kitchen and saw me hobbling toward her from the sunroom, confusion washed over her face. "Mom, why are you coming from there? Why aren't you in your room?" Before I could answer, Mark swooped in, too fast, too eager. A salesman stepping in before the customer changed their mind. "Hey, honey," he said cheerfully, coming up behind her. "Remember, we talked about rearranging the rooms for my mom." Emily blinked, dazed from fatigue. "What, Mark? What are you talking about?" "We didn't talk about anything." My heart hurt for her, for how easily he underestimated her intelligence. Mark's smile cracked, but he quickly forced it back into place. "Yes, we did. Last week, I told you my mother needed a place to stay for a while." Emily frowned. "You mentioned she was stressed, not that she was moving in, and definitely not that she'd take my mom's room." Mark's shoulders stiffened. "Well, you weren't really paying attention, Em. You were busy rushing out the door. Maybe you forgot." There it was, the gaslighting tone he used whenever he wanted to bend reality. Emily crossed her arms. "Mark, I didn't forget. You never told me this." Patricia suddenly stepped into the hallway. Her voice coated in sugar that fooled no one. "Emily, sweetheart, don't be upset. This is just temporary. Mark thought it would be good for me to be close by while I sort a few things out." Emily's eyebrows went up. "Why? What's going on?" Patricia hesitated. "Well, nothing urgent, nothing," Mark cut in sharply. "She just needs support right now." Emily looked between them, her face hardening. "So you decided to throw my mother into the sunroom like she's old furniture." Mark let out a breath of irritation. "Emily, don't exaggerate. Your mother is capable. She doesn't need, actually." Emily said in a voice sharp enough to slice steel. "She does. She's still recovering from her fall. A doctor told us that." "You remember the doctor, the one with the medical degree?" Mark opened his mouth, but no words came out. "And where are her things?" Emily asked, her tone colder than I'd ever heard. "In the garage," I answered softly, stepping forward. "He moved everything." Emily turned to look at me. I saw the moment it hit her, saw her heart crack in her eyes. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Mom, he put your belongings in the garage, without asking you." Mark jumped in before I could reply. "Emily, it was a logistical decision. The room needed to be cleared quickly. Mom needed a place to sleep tonight, and putting my mom in a freezing sunroom was your solution." Emily snapped. "Are you out of your mind?" Patricia bristled. "Excuse me, young lady, but I don't appreciate the tone, and I don't appreciate the disrespect." Emily shot back. "This is my house too. My mother lives here. You don't get to make unilateral decisions that hurt her." Mark's jaw clenched harder and harder. "Emily, can we talk privately?" "No," she said. "Say what you have to say right here." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Fine. I think your mother has been overstepping." My breath caught. So that's the narrative he wanted to spin. Emily nearly laughed. "Overstepping. She cooks for us, folds our laundry, and stays out of your way because you give her the cold shoulder every time she breathes too loud. She's altering the house dynamics, Mark insisted. I feel crowded. I stared at him, disbelief boiling in my veins. I feel crowded. You'd think I'd been throwing wild parties or dragging in stray animals. Emily took a step closer to him. Mark, she's recovering from a hip injury. How can you be so heartless? His voice rose. She's making me uncomfortable in my own home. And your solution was to humiliate her. Emily countered. Patricia stepped forward again, inserting herself. Emily dear, I'm sure he didn't mean to hurt anyone. Let's not make this. But Emily cut her off. Patricia, I'm sorry, but this isn't your decision. You don't live here. Patricia's mouth dropped open, like she wasn't used to being told no. Mark threw his hands in the air. Enough. I'm not going to stand here and be attacked in my own house. Emily stared at him with an expression that made even me nervous. Calm, controlled, dangerous. You're not being attacked, she said. You're being held accountable. Silence. Then Emily turned to me. Mom, go sit down. You shouldn't be on your feet. I nodded and carefully made my way back to the couch. Every step hurt, but my chest hurt more. Emily faced Mark again. Get her things out of the garage. Put them back where they belong. Mark's expression darkened. No. The word hit the air like a slap. No, Emily repeated slowly. This is my house, he said. I decide who stays where. The silence that followed was suffocating. But then, Emily said the words that changed the course of everything. Then maybe you shouldn't live here. Patricia gasped. Emily. Mark froze. What did you just say? You heard me, Emily said quietly. I won't let you treat my mother like this. If you can't respect her, then you're the one who needs to leave. Mark scoffed, but his voice shook. You're kicking me out. Over this? Yes, Emily said. Over this? Patricia clutched Mark's arm. Mark, you're not actually going to let her talk to you like this. Emily turned to her. And you need to leave too. Patricia looked like someone had dumped ice water over her entire body. Excuse me, you heard me, Emily repeated. You're not staying here. Mark's face turned red, then pale, then red again. Emily, be reasonable. You threw out my mother's things, she said. That was the last straw. And right then, right there, Mark realized that he had lost control, but he didn't give up. He tried something worse. He tried threats. Mark stood in the middle of the living room, breathing hard, his chest rising and falling like he'd just run a marathon made of pure ego and entitlement. Patricia hovered behind him, her face twisted in outrage, clutching her purse like she might swing at it. Emily stood her ground, calm, focused, dangerous. I watched them from the couch, my fingers gripping the blanket over my lap. My hip throbbed, but pain had taken a back seat to the storm unfolding. Mark pointed his finger at Emily. Never. A good sign. You can't kick me out of my own house. I pay the mortgage. Emily didn't blink. We both pay it, and I've been covering more than half for months. Mark flinched at that, his eyes darting at me, as if hoping I hadn't heard. But I had known. Emily made good money as a nurse, and Mark's consulting job had become more talking than consulting these past months. He puffed up again. I still contribute. You can't just throw me out. Emily folded her arms. You threw my mother out of her bedroom. That room wasn't hers. It's a guest room. I can decide who uses it. Emily's voice turned ice. You moved her into the sunroom, in winter, with no insulation, after a hip injury. Mark opened his mouth, and then closed it. You put her belongings in the garage, Emily continued, stepping closer. You humiliated her. You disrespected her. And you lied to me about being okay with her staying here. Patricia jumped in. Emily, sweetheart. Mark was only trying to make space for me. I am his mother, and she is my mother, Emily snapped. The difference is that my mom actually needed help. Patricia gasped, clutching her chest like Emily had physically smacked her. Mark stepped in front of her protectively. I won't stand here and let you insult my mother. Emily locked eyes with him. Then you should have thought about that before you insulted mine. Silence. And then Mark made his move. His voice dropped, cold and vicious. If you kick me out, I'll take the car. Emily frowned. Which car? The Prius, he said smugly. It's in my name. Emily didn't blink. You don't even drive it. I do when I need to, he snapped. And if I leave, I'm taking it with me. Emily didn't react. She didn't flinch. Then take it. I could see Mark's confidence falter. He hadn't expected her to call his bluff. So he escalated. Well then, he said, maybe I'll clear out my bank account too. The joint one. Emily's jaw flexed. but her voice didn't waver. "Half of that money is mine. You can fight me for it," he spat. "Let's see how good your lawyer is." Emily took a step toward him. "You want to play financial games? Really? Over this? You're choosing her over your husband," he shouted, pointing at me like I was a stray cat that had wandered into the house. Emily thundered back. "I'm choosing decency." He recoiled, stunned. Patricia tried again. "Emily, families live together. Mothers help their sons. That's how it works." "Then you should have taught him kindness," Emily snapped. Patricia's face twisted. "You ungrateful." Emily held up her hand. "Save it?" Mark suddenly straightened his shoulders, like he'd discovered a new angle, a new attack. "You know what?" he said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "If she stays, we'll leave." Emily blinked. "What?" Mark grabbed his mother's suitcase and lifted it dramatically. "If your mother's comfort matters more to you than your marriage, then fine, I'll go. And Patricia's coming with me." I couldn't help it. I laughed. A short, incredulous laugh that escaped before I could stop it. They both glared at me. Mark snapped. "What's funny?" I shook my head, smiling tiredly. "I've watched you push Emily around for years, Mark, and every time, she's let you think you had the upper hand. But now you have no idea what you're up against." Emily shot me a tiny smile, a silent thank you. Mark turned back to her. "So, what's your choice, me or her?" Emily's voice was soft. "Too soft. You really want to know?" "Yes," Mark demanded. "You really want me to choose?" "Yes." "Fine," she said. Then she pointed directly at me. "My mother. I choose my mother." The room froze. Mark's face drained of color. Patricia sputtered like an overheating car. Emily walked past both of them and opened the front door. The cold night air blew in hard, icy, unapologetic. "Out," she said simply. Mark blinked. "You can't be serious." "Out," Emily repeated. Patricia lurched forward. "Emily, don't do this. This is insane. You did this to yourselves," Emily said. "Both of you." Mark's voice trembled now. "If I walk out that door, we may not come back." Emily's eyes didn't soften. "Then you should have thought about that before you threw my mother's belongings into the garage." Mark looked at her like he didn't recognize her. Then he grabbed his duffel bag. "Fine, I'll go." Patricia followed, outraged. "This is absurd. You won't last a week without him." Emily ignored her, simply stepped aside and let them pass. Mark stomped through the doorway dramatically, expecting her to chase after him. Patricia shuffled out behind him, muttering curses under her breath. Emily closed the door behind them with a soft click. And that soft click, that was the sound of their world cracking open. Emily locked the door and turned around slowly. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaken. She was eerily calm. They always say storms are loudest before they break, but sometimes the quiet afterward can be just as devastating. She walked toward me, her expression filled with pain. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm so sorry." I shook my head quickly. "Sweetheart, no, none of this is your fault." She sat beside me and held my hand tightly. "I should have protected you sooner." My throat tightened. "You did, tonight." But her eyes, her tired, hurting eyes, held a shadow I hadn't seen before, a shadow Mark had put there. She wasn't crying yet, but she didn't have to. I could feel her heart break like a pulse through her hand. And then, with a voice so soft I almost missed it, she said, "I think he's going to try something ugly." She was right, because Mark wasn't done. Not even close. That night, after Mark and Patricia left, the house felt strangely lighter, like someone had opened a window and let out a thick, suffocating fog. But beneath that lightness was a tension neither Emily nor I could ignore. Emily stayed awake until almost 2 a.m., pacing, checking her phone, reheating tea she never drank. I kept telling her to rest, but she was wound tight as a bowstring. Around midnight, Patricia started blowing up her phone call after call, each ignored. Then text messages came, long paragraphs filled with emotional manipulation, guilt, and self-righteous outrage. "You embarrassed us tonight. A daughter should respect her husband. Mark is devastated. You ruined your marriage, choosing her over your own family. This is shameful, Emily." Emily didn't respond. Finally, the messages stopped around 1:30. I thought maybe they'd given up. I should be known better. Around 7 a.m., I woke up to the sound of something heavy hitting the front door. Bang, bang, bang. I sat up instantly, heart pounding. Emily was in my old room, her room, sleeping. She'd finally collapsed around 3 a.m., reached for my cane and carefully made my way down the hall. Bang, bang, bang. A voice shouted from outside, "Emily, open this door." Mark. I closed my eyes for a second, gathering myself. Then I opened the door lock. Not the door, just the lock. I cracked it 1 inch. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked. He looked awful, red-eyed, unshaven, like he'd spent the night pacing somewhere just as restlessly as Emily had. He glared at me. "Where is she?" "Sleeping. I need to talk to her." "No, you don't." He shoved the door, but my foot braced it. Despite my injury, I did not move. He stared at me like I'd suddenly grown a second head. "Linda, move, or what?" I asked quietly. "You'll throw me into the garage again." He flinched at that. "I just need to talk to her," he insisted. "She misunderstood everything. Last night was chaos. We all said things. You said things." I corrected him. "She spoke truth." He swallowed hard. "Where's Patricia?" Oh yes, that was important to him. "She's not here," I said. "But if she shows up, she's also not coming inside." His jaw clenched. "This isn't your home. I lived here long before your mother moved in," I said. "And I'll be here long after she moves out." His eyes flickered anger, confusion, disbelief. "Emily can't make decisions like this alone." She was emotional. "She was clear," I said. "Very clear." He shoved the door again, but less forcefully. "Open the door, Linda. Let me talk to my wife." "And let me be clear," I replied. "I will not wake my daughter up to deal with you." The look on his face told me he wasn't used to women telling him no. Not from me, not from Emily, not from anyone except Patricia, and she only said it when she was performing indignation. Mark stepped back, his voice tightening. "Fine, I'll wait." "You'll wait outside," I corrected. He scoffed. "This is ridiculous. I live here." "You walked out," I said. "You made that choice." He jabbed a finger at me. "She forced my hand." "You forced your own." A muscle in his jaw pulsed. He took a deep breath, exhaled sharply, and walked away from the door. But he didn't leave. He planted himself on the front porch, hands shoved in his pockets, pacing, then sitting, then pacing again. He was waiting, and he wasn't leaving. Emily came downstairs around 9:30, hair messy, face swollen from exhaustion. "Mom," she asked softly when she saw me sitting at the dining table. Is he still out there?" I nodded. She didn't seem surprised, just incredibly tired. She peeked through the blinds. Mark was sitting on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, staring at his phone. "Okay," she whispered, inhaling deeply. "I'll talk to him." "Are you sure?" I asked gently. "Yes, but I won't talk out there. He'll try to bulldoze me." She shivered. "I'll talk through the door." She approached the door and spoke through the wood. "Mark, I'm awake." He stood instantly. "Emily, open the door, please." "No," she said. "We can talk like this." He froze for a moment, stunned. She'd drawn a boundary he couldn't cross. Then he sighed loudly. "Emily, last night was insane. We were all emotional. I didn't mean to upset you." "But you did," she said calmly. "And my mother." He groaned. "I know, but you took it too far. Kicking me out. Really. You humiliated my mother," she reminded him. "You lied to me. You manipulated me. And then you tried to threaten me." He stepped closer. "Baby, it wasn't like that. Don't baby me." Silence. Emily continued. "We need space. Real space. And you're not coming in until we talk this through properly. Which won't be today." Mark scoffed. "So what? You're controlling the house now." "I'm controlling my peace," Emily said. He rubbed his face. "Where am I supposed to go? You have friends. Your mother has a home." He winced. "Emily, I don't want to be separated. You should have thought about that before you made your choice last night." He stepped back, frustrated. "I'm not leaving without something. I need my work laptop, my office stuff." Emily nodded. "Fine, I'll pack it. I'll leave it on the porch." He seemed relieved for a second. Then he snapped. "And my TV?" Emily laughed. Actually laughed. "Absolutely not." He stiffened. "Why not? It's mine." "You're not taking furniture," she said. "You can take personal items. That's it." He seethed. "Emily, this is childish. You threw my mother's belongings into the garage." Mark opened his mouth, closed it, then lowered his voice. "Emily, I messed up, okay? But don't blow up our whole marriage over this." Emily took a slow breath. "I'm not ending the marriage today, but I'm protecting myself and my mother." Mark went quiet for several long seconds. Finally he said, voice low and dangerous, "If you don't let me come in, you'll regret it." I stiffened on the couch. "But Emily," she didn't flinch. "What are you planning to do, Mark?" she asked softly. "Because every threat you make digs your grave deeper." Mark looked stunned, like he couldn't recognize the woman speaking to him. Emily's voice was firm. "Pick up your things in 2 hours. I'll leave them on the porch. Don't come back until we schedule a conversation. And next time you speak to my mother with disrespect, don't come back at all." Mark stared at the door, breathing hard, then he walked away. But as he got into his car, I saw the look on his face, a calculating look, the kind a man wears when he's planning something he thinks will turn the tables back in his favor. But he had no idea. The tables weren't just turning, they were about to flip. The next morning, the house felt different, like the calm right before a storm hits the coastline. The sun was shining through the kitchen windows, but the air carried a tension thick enough to taste. I could hear Maria and David in the living room, murmuring, not arguing, just talking in those hushed tones people use when they're trying to keep secrets under control. When I stepped downstairs, both of them froze. Maria's eyes narrowed slightly, defensive, as though I had walked in on something she didn't want me to know. David's expression flickered between guilt and the usual irritation he tried to bury beneath politeness. "Morning," I said, walking straight to the coffee maker. I didn't wait for their forced niceties. At my age, I prized my peace far more than anyone's fake kindness. "Good morning," David finally muttered, then cleared his throat. "We were discussing a few things. I figured." I stirred sugar into my cup. "You two always whisper before trouble happens." His eyes darted away, and Maria stiffened like a cat about to hiss. "We were just planning the day," she said with a brittle smile. "Is that okay with you?" "That depends," I replied calmly, taking a sip, "on whether the planning involves my things being thrown out again." David winced. Maria's lip curled, but she forced it back into a smile. "No one is touching your things, Helen," David said quickly. "Yesterday everything just got out of control. That's one way to put it." I didn't push further. Not yet. I wanted them to wonder what I knew and what I didn't. Let them sweat a bit. A surprising visitor around noon. While I was folding fresh laundry, the doorbell rang. I didn't expect anyone, and judging by the look of shock on Maria's face as she walked into the hallway, neither did she. She opened the door and froze. Standing on the porch was Clara, my daughter. Her face was flushed, her hair messy, her purse slung over her shoulder, as if she'd rushed out of the house without thinking twice. "Mom," she exclaimed, and immediately wrapped her arms around me. I hugged her back, a lump forming in my throat. Her voice trembled, whether from anger or worry. I wasn't sure yet. Maria took a cautious step back, her expression pale and stiff. David looked like he wanted to vanish behind the couch. "What happened?" Clara demanded, still gripping my arm. "Why do I have 2 voicemails from you at 3 a.m.? And what is this about you sleeping in the guest room? What's going on?" Before I could answer, Maria stepped forward. "It's not what it sounds like," she said sharply. "Your mother is exaggerating." "Are you serious?" Clara snapped. "I'm talking to my mother. You can explain after she does." The silence that followed was sharp enough to slice the air. I gently squeezed Clara's hand. "Let's sit. There's a lot to unpack." We all moved into the living room, though Maria hovered at the edge like she was preparing to defend herself in court. David sat next to her, shoulders hunched. Clara took the chair closest to me, her face hardening as I told her everything slowly, clearly, without dramatizing a single detail. I didn't need to. The truth was already dramatic enough. Her husband throwing out my belongings, her mother-in-law moving into my bedroom, me finding my clothes stuffed into garbage bags outside the door, and worst of all, the way Maria had smugly settled herself into my bed. By the time I finished, Clara was trembling with fury. "You moved your mother into my mom's room," she shouted, turning toward David. "Are you out of your mind?" David swallowed. "Clarushi needed a place. She wasn't comfortable upstairs, and you threw out my mom's things." "I didn't throw them out. I just moved into garbage bags," Clara cut in, her voice rising. "Outside, like she was trash." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Maria stepped forward, chin raised defiantly. "Clara, you're overreacting. This house belongs to you and your husband. Your mother comes and stays for free. I only needed space. I wasn't trying to cause problems." Clara stood up so abruptly that the chair scraped across the floor. "You weren't trying to cause problems," she repeated, her voice sharp. "You insulted her. You disrespected her. You acted like you could just walk into this house and take over." Maria sniffed. "I didn't take over anything. I was given permission." "By whom?" Clara spat. "Because I sure didn't give it." Maria's lips tightened. "David did." Clara turned toward her husband again, betrayal written across her face. You made decisions about my family without even telling me. David looked completely defeated. I thought I was helping. I didn't think she would get upset. You didn't think I would get upset. Or my mother. He didn't answer. The line is drawn. This is unbelievable, Clara said, pacing the room. Mom has done nothing but help us. She watches the kids. She cooks. She cleans. She never complains, yet you let your mother walk in here and disrespect her. David rubbed his forehead. I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. No, Clara said firmly. You didn't just mess up. You chose your mother's comfort over my mom's dignity. And then you didn't even apologize. The room fell silent. For the first time, Maria looked uncertain, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. Helen should have told us if she felt uncomfortable, she said. She shouldn't have gone behind our backs and involved you. I looked her square in the eyes. You told me to stay quiet. You literally said, my word carries more weight in this house. What exactly would telling you have fixed? Clara's jaw dropped. She said what? Maria opened her mouth, but Clara cut her off. That's it. I've heard enough. She pointed toward the stairs. Get your things. Maria blinked. Excuse me. You heard me. You're leaving today. David's eyes widened. Clara, no. This is non-negotiable, she said. You crossed every line there is, and I will not have you disrespecting my mother in her own daughter's home. Maria bristled. This isn't your home. Clara's voice rose like a crack of thunder. Yes, it is, and you are done here. Maria's face burned red, but she didn't move. Not yet, but I could see it. She knew the tide had turned, and for the first time since this war started, I wasn't the one standing alone. The moment Clara told Maria to get her things, the air in the room froze. You could almost hear the tension crackling like electricity. Maria's eyes widened, then narrowed into slits. She wasn't used to being told what to do, not by anyone, and certainly not by her daughter-in-law. You can't be serious, she hissed, her voice trembling with disbelief. I'm more than serious, Clara replied, arms crossed firmly. You're leaving today. David stood, torn between fear and loyalty, sweat collecting at his temples. Clara, please, let's just calm down and talk this through. My mother has nowhere to go. Clara shot him a withering stare. She had a home. She chose to leave it. She chose to come here. And she chose to treat my mother like garbage. Choices have consequences. Maria pressed a hand to her chest dramatically. I can't believe this. After everything I've done for you, David, after raising you, supporting you, helping you through school, this is how your wife talks to me. And how did you talk to his wife's mother? Clara fired back. Go on, I'll wait. Maria's mouth snapped shut. David rubbed his forehead and sank down on the sofa, defeated. I just don't want more drama. Drama, Clara repeated, laughing bitterly. David, your mother moved into my mom's room and threw her belongings into trash bags. Do you think that's calm behavior? Because I'm about 2 seconds from becoming dramatic myself. I sat quietly, watching everything unfold, my hands folded calmly on my lap. It wasn't that I felt above it. I had simply learned long ago that when people are unraveling, silence cuts deeper than any argument. Maria turned to me suddenly, pointing an accusing finger. You're enjoying this, aren't you? You've been causing trouble ever since I arrived, playing the victim, manipulating Clara. I raised an eyebrow. Manipulating. I didn't tell anyone anything until you made it unbearable. And I only called Clara because you made it clear my comfort didn't matter, in a house where I've supported this family for years. That's not true. It's absolutely true, Clara interjected. And you better stop pointing at my mom before I really lose it. Maria's face twisted with rage. This is unbelievable. I come here needing support and compassion. And what do I get? Accusations, hostility, disrespect. You're calling this disrespect. Clara took a step forward. If Mom had treated you the way you treated her, you'd have packed your bags and left in an hour. Maria opened her mouth to argue, but Clara cut her off with a sharp gesture. Enough. Get your things. David's cracks began to show. David stood up again, clearly panicking. Mom, maybe you should go. Just for now. Let things cool down. Maria turned on him like a storm. You're choosing them over me, your own mother. David's voice shook. I'm not choosing sides. I'm trying to keep the peace. You are choosing sides, she snapped. You're letting your wife boss everyone around. Boss everyone around. Clara scoffed. I'm sorry, was I the one who moved into someone's room without permission? Was I the one who rearranged the whole house and treated a guest like an inconvenience? David shut his eyes, exhaling shakily. I didn't think it through. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry, Mom. I should have asked Clara first. You think? Clara muttered under her breath. Maria stared at her son like she didn't recognize him. I raised a respectful, obedient man, not someone who throws his own mother out. Clara stepped in. No one is throwing you out for being his mother. You're being told to leave because you crossed a line with me and with my mother. There is a difference. Maria's nostrils flared. I don't have to take orders from you. But you will respect my home, Clara said, her voice steady as steel. And right now, the only way that happens is if you leave. Maria glared at me, as if this was somehow my fault. You should be ashamed. I smiled softly. For what? Setting boundaries. No, dear, I'm far too old to feel ashamed for expecting basic respect. Talking begins when Maria finally stomped up the stairs, muttering insults in Spanish under her breath. The house seemed to exhale. Clara looked exhausted, emotionally drained, and for a moment she pressed her face into her hands. I'm so sorry, Mom, she whispered. I reached out and rubbed her shoulder. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm proud of you. She let out a shaky laugh. I didn't know I could yell like that. Oh yes, honey, that was new, I said, grinning, but necessary. Meanwhile, David sat frozen on the couch, staring at the floor like a child waiting for punishment. David, Clara said gently, you need to understand something. I love you. But this decision you made, it hurt me deeply, and it hurt my mother even more. He nodded, shame covering him like a heavy blanket. I know, I messed everything up. I just didn't want Mom to feel lonely. I get that, Clara said, but you don't fix someone's loneliness by destroying someone else's dignity. His eyes glistened. I really am sorry, Helen. I know, I replied, but being sorry isn't enough. You have to show you mean it. He nodded again. Upstairs, we could hear drawers slamming, bags rustling, and Maria's angry monologue echoing as she packed. Every few minutes she'd stomp back and forth, letting us know how offended she was. At one point she screamed, I hope you're all happy. Clara yelled back, we will be when you stop throwing things. Maria didn't respond, but the slamming stopped. A final attempt at control 20 minutes later. Maria descended the stairs with 2 large suitcases and a loud sigh. Her face was red with frustration. Fine, I'm leaving, but don't expect me to come back when you realize how much you need me. Clara folded her arms. We'll take our chances. Maria looked at David with pleading eyes. Aren't you going to help me carry these to the car? David hesitated, a long, painful hesitation that said everything. He finally stood. I'll help you. He picked up her bags and followed her out. Clara and I stood in the doorway as Maria turned and gave us one last dagger-filled glare. This family will regret this, she barked. Clara tilted her head. Actually, I think this is the first good decision we've made in weeks. Maria scoffed, spun around, and climbed into David's car. He walked back to the house. Minutes later, no longer angry, just drained, worn out, and humbled. As he stepped inside, he whispered, I'm so sorry. He wasn't just apologizing to Clara, he was apologizing to me too. And in that moment, I realized something important. He finally understood what he had almost lost. After Maria's car disappeared down the street, the house felt like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. Air moved differently. Light landed softer. Even the walls seemed relieved. Clara let out a long breath. God, that woman is exhausting. I chuckled softly. And you handled her like a pro. David sat on the sofa, elbows on his knees, staring at the carpet. He looked like a man who had run a marathon in the wrong shoes, tied, aching, and painfully aware of his mistakes. Clara walked toward him and sat beside him. For a moment, they didn't speak. She simply rested her head on his shoulder, and he reached up and squeezed her hand gently. Are you mad at me? He finally whispered. I'm hurt, she replied, but I'm not giving up on us. He exhaled, shoulders shaking with relief. I'm really sorry, Clara. I swear I didn't mean to hurt you or your mom. I know, she said softly, but you did, and we need to make sure it never happens again. David nodded quickly, desperately. I'll do whatever it takes. Clara looked at me, seeking reassurance. I nodded. Healing takes time, but acknowledgement is step 1. David swallowed hard. I'll fix this. I promise. The cleaning that turned into healing later that afternoon. Clara suggested we reset the house, open windows, burn some candles, clean up the mess Maria left. Mom, she said, handing me a soft cloth, I want this place to feel like home again, our home. David joined in too, helping carry Maria's leftover things to the garage and sorting through items she'd scattered around the house. At one point, He held up a decorative throw pillow Maria had brought with her. Clara recoiled. Absolutely not. That thing looks like it came from a funeral parlor. David snorted, tossing it into the donation pile. It felt good hearing him laugh again. A small, genuine sound. As we cleaned, the kids ran around the living room, happy to be free from Maria's rigid rules. Clara had told them gently that Grandma Maria went home for a little while. They didn't ask questions. Kids always sense tension deeper than adults think. They were just glad the storm was gone. I moved slowly but steadily, wiping surfaces, folding blankets, rearranging cushions. It wasn't the work, it was the symbolism. We weren't cleaning a house. We were cleansing energy, and every stroke of the cloth, every drawer reset, every candle lit felt like stitching a torn family quilt back together. When we reached the upstairs hallway, Clara paused outside the master bedroom. My room now returned to me. You ready to take your room back? She asked. I inhaled deeply. Yes, I said, more than ready. My room, restored. When we stepped inside, I felt a strange wave of emotion. It was still my room, but Maria had left fingerprints everywhere, her perfume lingering on the curtains, her robe draped over the chair, her little decorative trinkets on the nightstand. Clara grabbed a laundry basket. Let's get this stuff out first. We emptied drawers, collecting the last remnants of Maria's invasion. A few items made us laugh: a gaudy gold hairbrush, an overpriced night cream, a pair of satin slippers with feathers. Feathers, I said, holding them up. Clara laughed. She watches too many telenovelas. David poked his head in. I'll take these to the garage. Thank you, we said in unison. With the room empty, Clara helped me put fresh bedding on. Crisp white sheets, the quilt I loved, my pillows just how I liked them. We rearranged the furniture slightly, giving the room a brighter flow. When we finally finished, she stepped back. It looks like you again, she said. I smiled. It feels like me again. She hugged me tightly. Mom, I promise no one will ever disrespect you in this house again. I swear it. I held her close. I know, sweetheart, and I'm proud of you. The dinner that changed everything that evening, David insisted on cooking. He wanted to make up for everything, and Clara wasn't about to stop him. He made chicken Alfredo, salad, and garlic bread. The kitchen smelled amazing. When we all sat down together, David looked at me with honest eyes. Helen, he said, voice steady but soft, I know I messed up badly. I didn't protect your space. I didn't defend you, and I didn't make sure you felt safe in this home. I listened quietly. I grew up with my mom overpowering everything, he continued. Her voice, her decisions, her opinions. She took over my life for so long. I guess I didn't realize when she was doing it again. Clara reached for his hand. I don't want to be that kind of man, David said. Not to my wife, not to my kids, not to you. Your family, Helen. You've helped us so much, and you deserve respect more than I've given. His voice cracked. I'm really, truly sorry. I nodded slowly. Thank you, David. That means a lot. He looked relieved, like he'd been waiting for forgiveness to free him from his own guilt. But, I added, an apology is a seed. You plant it with words, but you water it with actions. I will, he said immediately. I'll prove it. I believed him, not because he said it, but because his face showed humility I'd never seen before. What the kids saw later. I went upstairs to check on the grandkids before bed. They were drawing pictures at their little desk. What are you two working on? I asked. The house feels happy again, the older one said proudly. So we're drawing a happy house. My heart melted. And Mommy isn't yelling, the younger added. I stroked their hair gently. Your mom loves you very much. Sometimes grown-ups get upset, but things are better now, because you're here, the older one said. I blinked back tears. Because we're all doing better, I whispered. The night of reflection. Later that night, as I sat in my freshly restored room, I looked around and felt something I hadn't felt since Maria entered the house. Peace. Real, deep, comforting peace. The window was open, letting in a cool breeze. The lamp glowed warmly beside my bed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe in my own space. I lay back on the pillows, letting the moment wash over me. Bafa Maria was gone. The house was healing. David was trying. Clara was standing firm. And I was finally reclaiming my place in this family, not as a burden, not as an afterthought, but as someone whose presence shaped the home itself. Yes, things were changing. But something told me the story wasn't over yet. Not even close. Because Maria, she wasn't done. And she wasn't going to go down quietly. Not that easy. For a few days, life settled into something that resembled normal. Breakfasts felt lighter. The kids laughed more freely. Even David, who had been walking on eggshells, slowly regained his natural rhythm, checking homework, fixing the dripping faucet, telling dad jokes that made Clara groan and me chuckle. But the peace was deceptive. It was the kind of calm waves make before a hurricane hits the coastline. We didn't expect her. We should have expected her, but we didn't. A knock at the worst possible moment. It was Friday afternoon. Clara was in the kitchen preparing a pot roast for dinner. The kids were sprawled on the living room rug building a Lego city, and I was sewing a button back onto one of David's shirts. David was due home from work in about half an hour. That's when the knock came. Not a normal knock, not polite. It rattled the door like someone was trying to break it down. Clara froze mid-stir. The kids looked up in alarm. I felt a cold shiver roll down my spine. Clara wiped her hands on a towel and whispered, "Please, don't let it be her." Another violent knock. I stood, my knees cracking slightly, and made my way to the front door. Clara whispered urgently, "Mom, wait," but it was too late. I opened the door. Maria stood there, sunglasses on her face, lips pressed tight, suitcase beside her, and an expression that promised nothing good. "Well," she demanded, "aren't you going to invite me in?" My jaw tightened. "Maria, what are you doing here? What does it look like?" She brushed past me, didn't ask permission, didn't wait for permission, didn't even consider that permission mattered. "I'm staying here. David told me I could." Clara's face drained of color. "David told you, WHAT? Oh, don't play dumb," Maria snapped. "He called me this morning, said he felt bad for how things ended and that I should come back so we could talk like adults." The room spun for a moment. Clara wasn't breathing. The kids instinctively climbed onto the couch, sensing something dangerous. And me. I felt my hands tremble. The setup revealed Maria dropped her suitcase on the floor with a loud thud. "I'll take the guest room," she announced. "It's small and dusty, but I guess I'll survive." Clara stepped forward, shaking with anger. "David did not tell you to come here." Maria smirked, smug and victorious. "He absolutely did." She opened her purse, pulling out her phone like it was a weapon. "He said then," I quote, "Mom, maybe we should talk later this week." "That's not the same thing as move back in," Clara snapped. "But it's permission enough," Maria said sweetly. "He feels guilty, and he should." I wanted to scream, not because of her words but because behind that smug smile was something colder, something calculating. Maria had no intention of talking. Maria had come to reclaim territory. David walks into the trap. The door opened behind us. David stepped inside, keys jingling. "Hey," he said with a tired smile, "I'm home." He froze mid-step when he saw her. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Maria put on her sweetest, fakest smile. "You invited me." "Me?" David's face drained of color. "Invited you. I said, we could talk sometime. Not this." Clara crossed her arms tightly. "You need to fix this, right now." Maria shook her head dramatically. "Are you really going to embarrass me? I came all this way because you sounded sad. You said you missed me." David looked panicked. "I said I should have handled things better. I didn't say anything about coming back." "Oh, please," Maria scoffed. "You always back down around her. She twists everything." Clara stepped forward, pointing to the door. "Maria, get up." Maria's eyes burned with fury. "You don't own this house. I have every right to be here." "No," Clara said, voice trembling with rage. "No, you don't. We were having a conversation," Maria shouted. "A family conversation." David finally snapped. "That doesn't mean you move back in." Maria flinched. Silence swallowed the room. He rarely raised his voice, and never at her. "Maria's last stand. You're choosing her over me again," Maria said quietly, dangerously, "just like I told you she would make you do." David shook his head. "No, I'm choosing my marriage, my sanity, my children's peace." Maria's face twisted. "I'm your mother, and I'm a father," he replied, "and a husband. And this," he gestured around the room, "is my home, not yours." Maria's voice cracked into a shriek. "I gave you life, and this is how you repay me." "No one is repaying anything," Clara said sharply. "We're setting boundaries, something you've never respected." Maria's breathing quickened. She looked around the house like she was memorizing her enemies. Then her eyes landed on me, cold, accusing, filled with venom. "This is your doing," she spat. "You turned them against me." I stepped forward, meeting her stare. "I didn't turn anyone," I said calmly. "You pushed yourself out." "No," she hissed. "You're the snake here. You're the intruder." I almost laughed. Intruder, in my daughter's home. In the home I have supported since the day she and David had their first child. I stepped even closer. No, Maria. The only intruder here was you. Her mask cracked. And in that second, she realized she had no power left. Not over David, not over Clara. Not over me. And definitely not over the house. The final words, before the foul David walked to her suitcase and lifted it. Mom, I love you, but you need to leave, right now. Maria looked heartbroken, betrayed, furious. You will regret this, she whispered. David shook his head. No, I regret letting it go on this long. David, goodbye, Mom. She stared at him, searching for any softness. She found none. With a trembling inhale, Maria lifted her chin, grabbed her purse, and walked to the door. She paused only once to glare at Clara, then at me. Then she walked out. David locked the door behind her. Slowly. Purposefully. Irreversibly. And after a long silence, he turned to Clara and me. I'm done, he said. She doesn't control my life anymore. Clara burst into tears and hugged him tightly. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw something new in David. Not guilt, not confusion. Not fear. Strength. Finally. The moment the door closed behind Maria and the lock clicked into place, it felt like the entire house exhaled. But instead of relief, the air thickened with emotion, hurt, shock, exhaustion, and something new. Resolved. David leaned against the door, hands on his knees, breathing like he had just outrun a monster. Clara approached him slowly, carefully, like she wasn't sure if he would fall apart or hold himself together. You okay? She whispered. David nodded, but it wasn't convincing. I think so. He looked over at me. His eyes were red not from tears, but from emotional fatigue so heavy it sank into his bones. I can't believe she showed up like that, he said softly. I didn't think she'd actually come. You've known your mother your whole life, I replied gently. You know she doesn't hear no. She hears challenge accepted. He let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, she does. Clara took his hand, squeezing it. You did the right thing. I'm proud of you. He swallowed hard. It didn't feel good. Doing the right thing rarely does, I said. David nodded again, slower this time, like he was letting the truth settle. The kids' reaction. The kids had quietly retreated to the hallway during the confrontation. When they finally stepped out, their big eyes were wide and uncertain. Is angry grandma gone? The younger one asked. I walked over and crouched down. Yes, sweetheart, she's gone. Is she coming back? The older one whispered. I shook my head softly. Not to live here. No. Both children visibly relaxed, their shoulders dropping. The younger one climbed onto David's lap, and he held her tightly, kissing the top of her head. I'm sorry you heard all that, he murmured. She wrapped her little arms around his neck. It's okay, Daddy. Clara watched them with a mixture of sadness and relief. She reached for the older child, pulling him into her arms. Mommy, he asked, why did she yell at you? Clara hesitated, her voice trembling, because sometimes grown-ups don't know how to handle their feelings. But Daddy and I won't let anyone yell in our home anymore. The child nodded seriously, as if absorbing a life lesson he would carry into adulthood. Dinner. That turned into a family meeting. The pot roast finished cooking during the chaos, filling the house with warm, comforting smells. Clara insisted we still have dinner together to ground ourselves, to reclaim the evening, to remind the kids that normalcy still existed. But halfway through the meal, David put his fork down. I need to say something. Clara and I both looked at him, waiting. I've spent my whole life trying to keep the peace with my mom, he began. It was always easier to just give in, agree, avoid conflict. He rubbed his forehead, but all that did was make her worse. And today I finally saw what it was doing to my own family. He looked at Clara, to you, then at me, and to you, Helen, then at the kids. And to them, his voice cracked. I don't want to be that kind of husband, or that kind of father, or that kind of man. Clara reached for his hand and squeezed. You're not that man anymore. Today proved that. David nodded slowly. I just didn't realize how bad it had gotten. Not until I saw her walk in like she owned the place. I placed my hand over his. You woke up today, David. And that's not weakness. That's growth. His eyes softened. Thank you, Helen. Really? Clara wiped her eyes and smiled weakly. Okay, enough crying. We're gonna flood the pot roast. Everyone laughed a little, but genuine. The late night knock, we thought the worst was over. We were wrong. At 9:47 p.m., just as the kids fell asleep and Clara was putting dishes into the dishwasher, there came another knock. This one was quiet, too quiet. David stiffened immediately. If that's her again. Clara grabbed his arm. Don't open it. But he did. Slowly. Standing on the porch wasn't Maria. It was a police officer. My stomach dropped. Good evening, the officer said politely. Are you David Ramirez? David nodded cautiously. Yes, sir. The officer pulled out a folded paper. We received a call from your mother, Maria Ramirez. She claims you threw her out of the home, refused her personal belongings, and forcibly removed her from the premises. Clara's jaw dropped. What? She came here uninvited. We're not here to take sides, the officer said calmly. We just need to do a wellness check and confirm no one is in immediate danger. Clara looked like she might explode. David raised his hands. Officer, she showed up unannounced. She lied to my wife. She barged in. We asked her to leave. That's all. The officer nodded. Can I step inside for a moment? Yes, come in, I said before Clara or David could respond. I knew this dance. Older people often weaponize authority when they feel their control slipping. Maria was predictable in her unpredictability. The officer stepped in. He looked around the house clean.com. Quiet. The kids' drawings, still taped to the walls. The pot roast smell lingering in the air. Nothing chaotic, nothing unsafe. Definitely, nothing matching Maria's story. Everything seems peaceful here, the officer said gently. Do you want to file a trespassing notice? I can leave the paperwork. David hesitated. Clara didn't. Yes, she said firmly. We want it. David blinked. Clara, no, she said. She called the police on you because she didn't get her way. This is her escalation. Protecting our homes starts now. The officer handed her a form. Fill that out. If she returns without invitation, she can be formally removed next time. David took a shaky breath. Thank you, officer. The officer nodded and left. When the door closed, the silence was heavy. She called the police on me, David whispered. Stunned, Clara stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Because she can't control you anymore. I placed a hand on his back. This isn't your fault, David. This is her pride drowning. He nodded slowly, painfully. As the truth settled, Maria had just declared a war she couldn't win. The turning point that night. After everyone went to sleep, I sat in my room thinking about Maria, thinking about David, thinking about families that break and families that heal. The house was quiet, but somewhere outside, far away, I could feel Maria stewing, planning, plotting her next move. But she didn't understand something fundamental. David wasn't on her leash anymore. Clara wasn't intimidated. The children felt safer without her. And me, I wasn't the quiet, passive mother-in-law she thought she could bully. For the first time, I saw clearly. The next time Maria came back, she wouldn't be coming for reconciliation. She'd be coming for revenge. And she'd regret it deeply. The next morning, the house felt lighter than it had in weeks. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The air smelled faintly of the pot roast leftovers and fresh linens. And for the first time since Maria's first invasion, we all sat down without tension clawing at our shoulders. David was quietly making pancakes, his movements deliberate but relaxed. Clara was unpacking the kids' art supplies, smiling softly at their creations. And me, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, soaking in the calm before it fully settled into reality. It felt surreal. After the chaos, the yelling, the threats, and the intrusion, peace had returned. David's growth. David turned to Clara, holding a plate of pancakes like a peace offering. I know I let things go too long. I made excuses. I let her guilt trip me. I didn't protect this family. Clara smiled, shaking her head. You're not the same man who let it happen, David. Today, you proved that. I hope so, he said softly. I mean it, though I don't want her controlling our lives anymore, ever. You won't, I said, giving him a firm nod. You finally put boundaries in place. Boundaries don't make you weak, they make you responsible. He exhaled and looked down at the pancakes. I never realized how much courage it took to say no. It takes practice, I replied. But you learned today, and you'll keep learning. Clara's firm stand. Clara, ever vigilant, had begun making changes around the house. She rearranged rooms slightly, giving me a better space for peace and quiet. She talked to the kids about boundaries, teaching them that respect was non-negotiable even from grandparents. The kids began smiling more, playing more freely, feeling the stability their parents finally enforced. For the first time, the house felt like a real home, not a battlefield. Clara turned to me and whispered, "Mom, thank you for standing up with me. I couldn't have done it alone." I hugged her tightly. "Sweetheart, you didn't do it alone either. You've got the backbone for this family and I'm proud." Her eyes filled with tears, not of anger this time, but of relief and pride. "We did it," she said softly. "Yes," I said, "we did." The lasting lesson over the next few days. Life slowly returned to routine. Maria didn't call, she didn't knock, and when David cautiously checked, he discovered she hadn't even tried to contact the police again. It was clear she had learned, perhaps not fully, but enough to know that this family would not be manipulated again. David began taking small steps to repair trust with Clara and me. He made an effort to include me in decisions about the home. He checked in with Clara about boundaries. He even laughed more, a sound we hadn't heard in weeks. And Clara, she was fearless now, protective of her family, loving and strong. Even the kids noticed. "Mommy, the house feels happy," the older one said one morning, grinning, like before scary grandma came. Clara laughed. "Exactly, sweetie. That's how it should be." Maria's bitter regret. Weeks later, David finally received a text from Maria. It was short, clipped. "I can't believe you all forced me out. You'll regret this one day." David read it silently, then showed it to me and Clara. We looked at each other and laughed soft. Victorious and full of relief, Clara shook her head. "Regret?" She "See, we're not backing down. She won't have power here anymore." "I'd say the same," I added. "And if she tries anything else, we're ready. We know our strength now." David smiled faintly, a genuine, calm smile. "Yeah, she won't win. Not this time. Not ever." A family restored that evening. We had a simple dinner. The house was filled with laughter, not tension. The kids played board games in the living room, while David and Clara exchanged teasing glances across the table. I looked around the room, feeling a warmth that went beyond comfort. It was victory, justice, and love all rolled into one. No more intrusions, no more chaos, no more intimidation. Maria had underestimated us all. She had underestimated my patience and resolve, Clara's courage and protective instinct, David's ability to finally stand up for his family. Together, we were a fortress, a home where respect mattered more than fear, and in that moment, I knew our family had not just survived Maria's wrath, we had conquered it. Final words. As I tucked the kids into bed that night, I whispered softly, "Remember, it's okay to stand up for what's right. Never let anyone tell you that respect isn't important, even if it's family." They nodded, sleepy eyes wide but thoughtful. Clara hugged me as I returned to my room. "Mom, thank you for everything." I kissed her forehead. "Thank yourself, too. You were the strongest today." And finally, I sat back on my bed, looking around my room, the room Maria had tried to claim, then tried to ruin. It was peaceful, safe, mine. And the best part, this time, I wasn't just standing in my home, I was standing in victory. Hit the subscribe button for more videos.